Ahoy there makers, do you want to know more about the new Raspberry Pi 16GB version? Then this is the show for you. So let's dive straight in. My name's Kevin, come with me as we build robots, bring them to life with code and have a whole load of fun along the way. Okay, let's get over to today's announcement, which is the new Raspberry Pi 5 16GB version. So let's take a look and see what this is all about. So this is basically a new edition of the Raspberry Pi, which has now got 16GB of RAM. If you've ever looked at a Raspberry Pi, I'm trying to see if I've got one to hand actually. Maybe this one here that's on the back of my C3PO. If you ever looked at a Raspberry Pi, underneath where the active cooler fan is, you'll see there's a little table of different memory sizes, and there's a little resistor against each of them. And at the very bottom, there's been a bit of a space there, which indicated the potential for a 16GB version. Now, if you remember when I interviewed Eben Upton back at the launch of this, back in, was it 2023, around October time, I asked him, is there a potential for a 16GB version? Because I'd noticed that there's that little table and a little space for it. And at the time he said it wasn't actually possible because of the chips that they were using. However, that chipset did change a while ago. There was a kind of a rejiggle of the stepping they're using on these chips. So there's now this capability for a 16GB chip. So that means we can do more things. Let's have a look at what this is all about. So it's the same processor. There is actually a firmware update, which means we get a bit of a memory boost. It's only a small boost, but it is there. Jeff Gehling also released a video on this morning, so definitely go and check out his. He's got some kind of stats on that. And the other interesting thing is the price point. It's $120. Or £114 if you're in the UK. So this is the kind of $114.50 I think it might be. This is the kind of a price comparison. So for the 2GB version it's £47. For the 4GB version, which has got twice the amount of RAM, it's £57. So you're paying £10 for 2GB in effect. We then jump to the 8GB version, which was the previous maximum size. That's £77. And then there's the £115, which is the one that's been launched today at 16GB. So if you think about, if you buy a brand new, Mac Mini, the M4 version, that comes with 16GB of RAM as standard. So this is now kind of on a par with that. However, the Mac Mini is a way bit more powerful than the Raspberry Pi. The best value Raspberry Pi you can probably buy to date is the 4GB version. That's probably good enough for most use cases. You can open many browser tabs in that. You can do a lot of work. If you use it as like a web server, that's plenty. So the 16GB is an interesting choice that's been released. So who exactly is this for? So this is for power users and professional users, professional applications. So we'll have a look at what some applications it could be for that. But people who host websites locally can now host more websites at the same time. For example, I've got a little cluster just behind me, those lights that are just flickering there. That's kevsrobots.com, clusteredpi.com, and a few other bits and pieces that make those websites run. They're all hosted on 4 Raspberry Pi 5s. Which I think are all 8GB versions, a terabyte of storage, SD storage on there. So people who run memory-hungry applications such as Chrome, you can open many Chrome browsers now without missing a beat on the Raspberry Pi. Now the main thing, what does this mean for the average person that might be interested in this? It means we can run bigger large language models. I think this is really what this is targeted at. We'll have a demo of some of those in a minute, and you can make your own mind up about that. There's a larger range of LLMs as well that this opens up, because the 8GB of RAM, some of the models are borderline 8GB already, so this means we can run much larger language models. Now they won't necessarily run faster. They do technically, because the firmware update means on this particular model of Raspberry Pi you get that little speed bump, but we'll talk about that more later on. So, use cases. We can now run twice as many Docker containers. If you're a user of Docker or containers, then you can run twice as many as you previously have. So for me, this is quite a boost because I run a lot of Docker containers. The kezrobots.com, for example, the search engine that goes behind kezrobots.com, all these things are separate Docker containers. And the reason I create them as containers, it means I can very quickly deploy these to any number of Raspberry Pis that I've got quite a few, and they can immediately pull everything that they need from the local repository, and they can spin up those containers. So it's very, very quick to deploy applications and then tear them down without leaving a trace. So it's very tidy. We've got Ollama, which is a open source large language model engine, so you can download all kinds of different models that have been created. We'll have a look at that model zoo, as they call it, in a minute, but that's something that you can definitely now really utilize. And of course, games. If you run any kind of games, again, Jeff talks about this on his video that I watched this morning. If you want to check that one out, I'm pretty sure if you're watching this, you'll have seen that one as well. But there's a lot more gaming possibilities because of that extra RAM that's available. So if you like what I do and you want to make more of these kinds of videos, definitely drop me a like on this video. Let me know if this is something that you're interested in, or would you consider yourself a Raspberry Pi Power user, or would you say that you're a kind of standard user of Raspberry Pi Kit? And if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please consider subscribing. It means an awful lot to me, and I would love that if you subscribed as well. Okay. I do go live as well every single Sunday, religiously I would say, at 7 o'clock GMT. So if you want to hang out and chat live, you can definitely do that every single Sunday. Forward saying, hooray, we can run a crisis on the Pi 5. So, large language model, let's talk about that for a minute. Why don't large language models run faster with the AI hat or the AI kit from Raspberry Pi? So one of the things that, one of the comments I got quite often was, on the video that I did for the AI kit and the AI hat, is, can I run large language models using this hat? So the AI kit and the AI hat have very high performance neural processing unit. So it's a bit like a GPU, but it's not a graphics processor, it's a neural processor. Essentially, they're exactly the same things, but NVIDIA pretty much have the market for graphics processors, and the Halo processors that are used in these AI kit and AI hat, they're really designed for running kind of image processing, I would say. So the AI kit and AI hat don't have actually a lot of RAM. I think they have, it's actually not documented, but I believe it's about 4 or 8 gig of RAM. Now, large language models require lots of RAM, and also lots of processing capability to run fast. And essentially, they need to either be on the same silicon or have an interconnect that's really wide, really fast, so that they can shove around lots of data, process that data, shove it back into the RAM, and do lots of calculations on that. The AI kit and the AI hat cannot shunt data in and out of that NPU via the PCIe connector. Speeds that make it really fast. So if you've got the AI kit or the AI hat, your large language models will not run faster on those yet. And I say yet, I would predict, and I don't have any inside knowledge about this, but I think based on the performance of these large language models on the Raspberry Pi 16 gig, which we'll have a look at in a minute, I suspect that we will probably have another hat from Halo, which can do the large language models. It'll be like a large memory version of that. I believe that's something that is available now from Halo as a separate product, but it's not something you can get as a hat just yet. So I predict that will happen possibly sometime this year. So how to run large language models on a Raspberry Pi. I thought it'd be quite fun to show you this and show this running on a Raspberry Pi 16 gig. So first of all, how to install Ollama on your Raspberry Pi. I've made this really easy for you. If you go to github.com/kevinmcaleer/clusteredpi, this is where I store all my Docker image, Docker Compose files. So that makes it really easy to basically grab this Docker Compose file, if you just clone that repository, and then change into the clusteredpi/stacks/Ollama folder. And then if you simply type docker-compose up-d, that will bring up, it'll download all the dependencies and then bring up that container, and it should just work. You will need to have Docker installed on your Raspberry Pi before that, but that's quite straightforward to do that as well. Just go to docker.com and follow the instructions on there. I have actually done a tutorial on this as well. If you go to kevsrobots.com, search for Docker, you'll find a little mini course on that as well. So let's have a bit of a demo, shall we? What I'm going to do, I'm just going to flick over to my Raspberry Pi. And I've got this ready to go. What I'm actually using to share this as well, I've connected to Raspberry Pi Connect, which you can see at the top there. This is my 10th Raspberry Pi 5, I think. And yes, what I've got on here is I've cloned the clustered Pi repository from GitHub. And if I just do an ls in this folder here, you can see I've got this Docker Compose and this get web UI. Ignore the get web UI thing, that's an older version of something. If I actually just look inside this Docker Compose file, you'll see that it's made up essentially of 2 different services. there is an Ollama service, and then there's an Open Web UI service. Ollama is kind of a back-end service that will do the large language model hosting, and then the Open Web UI will give you a nice web interface that looks very, very similar to ChatGPT that you can then use to make your queries and so on. And all the configuration is in there just to make this just work. It'll even save these in between you. If you want to shut down that Docker container, it'll store everything in a repository, in a volume. That's the word I'm looking for. Sorry. Right. So if I now just go Docker compose up-d, this will bring up the Ollama and the Open Web UI. So you can see, because it's already got those, it came up really quick. Now if I head back over to my other browser tab, let me bring this up and just connect to it. It's doing that because I just need to, oops, of course it would do this while I'm trying to demo this to you. There we go. So if I just need to log in, let me just type in my username and password. There we go. And you can just see there's a couple of the chats I was doing just to test this out. So when you very first load up Ollama, you'll need to download some models. So it doesn't come with any models kind of pre-installed. You'll have to download them. It's really simple to do. You just click on your little profile icon over there, go to the admin panel, and then click on settings, and then you go to connections. And if we go to this little manage icon over here, this is now connecting to the Ollama service within that Docker container, and we can simply type in the name of a model that we want to download. But if you don't know what those model names are, you can simply head over to ollama.com/models. So if we go over here, we click on models, it'll take you to this page, and you can simply see that that title is the name of the model that we need to download. So for example, that QWQ, we could type that in and have that download. So if I do QWQ, click that little download icon, you can see they're pulling manifest. It's now grabbing that model, and it'll add it to our local repository of models. So let me just quit that. It'll carry on downloading that in the background. It'll let us know when it's actually finished doing that. But if I now do a new chat, and I click on this little drop down, these are all the models that I've already downloaded. And you can see there that it has a little number and then a character after that, B. This is how many billion, nodes that this contains. So the small ones, such as the 3.2 billion, that's the Ollama 3.2. We've got Dolphin Phi, which is 3 billion. And then we've got some much larger ones like Phi 4, which is 14.7 billion. Now they don't, that's not the size in kind of gigabytes, that's kind of size in the number of tokens that this can, that this has been built from, if you like. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to select a smaller one to begin with. Let's go for Llama 3.2. Now if we tell that one there, tell me a fun fact about the Roman Empire, and in one sentence. Basically just don't want this to go on for a very long time. Now what I want to show you is the in the background what Ollama is doing. So I'm going to switch over to here. I'm going to type in htop, and this will show you that all 4 processors are now running at 100%. So this is really maxing out. You can probably just about make out there the Ollama runner, and there's a number of different Ollama runners. So that's Ollama in the background actually processing that large language model. The first thing it needs to do is kind of unpack that model, load it into RAM, and then put your prompt through that model to see what the outcome is. And at 1 token at a time, which is essentially either a word or a part of a word, you'll see the stream come back. It does take a couple of seconds on a Raspberry Pi because they're really not optimized for large language models, but we cannot now at least run much larger ones. So if we go over here, you can see we're actually using 3.8 gig of RAM overall. Now there's actually a nicer command than this, which is btop. If I load up btop and make that full screen, it's similar to that htop, but it's just a little bit larger. Let's see if we can zoom in on that a little bit. Control Shift and plus. There we go. So you can see there we've got the CPU usage, and you can see how much memory is being used. So Ollama itself is using 2.9 gigs, And then there's the other Ollama, the serve part, that's running 36 megs, so that's tiny. So clearly the model we're using is 2.9 gig in size. Now let's go back to the Ollama response and see how that's getting on. So there we go. So it's finished providing our prompt. It will have typed it out just like ChatGPT does, but quite slower. And the other thing that's of interest on here is that it's still maxing out 100% CPU, even though we have the response back. So why do you think that might be? It's actually the name that it gives the chat. So it's now rereading what it's written out as the prompt, and it's summarizing that as a title, as a quick kind of snappy title. So it's now given Roman Empire's Waste Secrets. So there you go. So it's taken that text there, summarized it into a title, and it had to run that through its own language model. So we can get some stats from that. We can see there it took total evaluation, oh there you go, total approximate time 1 minute 30 seconds ish. So it is quite slow, and that's quite a small model. So why don't we try the same prompt, but we're going to use a much larger well, before we do that, there's another thing we can do in Ollama. We can run multiple models at the same time. So you might sometimes see this when you're running like ChatGPT, and it'll give you two responses at the same time, and you pick which one you prefer. That's essentially two different models running at the same time concurrently. We can do this too. So we can paste in that same prompt, and you can see there we've got two different models kind of competing side by side. It'll probably take twice as long to do that because it's got twice as much work to do. And we can even check and see how much RAM that is using. So we could go over here. So we're maxing out again 100% CPU on all 4 cores, and you can see that we have two models running. We've got one at 4.1 gig and the other one at 2.9. The 2.9 is the one that we previously ran. So you can see that overall we're now using 8.32 gigs of RAM. So we're already beyond what was capable on the previous Raspberry Pi. Let's go back to over here and see what's going on. So it will probably take, like I said, twice as long because it's running these at the same time, and it's running at 100% CPU on all 4 cores. So it's really pushing the Raspberry Pi to its absolute limit. And this is why I think a potential new product, and it might not be by Raspberry Pi directly, would be a hat that you can attach to the top of the Raspberry Pi. It can load up these models in the way that you load up a model onto the AI camera, and it can essentially do all that work on the same silicon without having to shunt things backwards and forwards, because that's what makes it really slow. So interestingly, we're getting a completely different response than we did on the previous Llama 3.2 one. So there you go. Did you know that Julius Caesar's wife, Livia, was, what does that say, was known for... So it looks really slow, this, as it pumps out the responses. Known for her extravagant lifestyle. The reason I said only one sentence is that this could go on for quite some time. I did ask it a question before, one of these previous ones, and it was about 15 minutes. Is it that one there? We looked to see how long that took. That was 2 minutes to respond. Introduction to Python was 15 minutes, and that was running on this Arena model. So if we go back to our chat and see how that's getting on. So that one is nearly finished. It's gone over one sentence, which is naughty. It's ignored my prompt there. She won 1,000 pieces of gold. Come on, wrap it up, Fee. And the Llama 3.2 hasn't even started to respond yet. They are running concurrently. This isn't one running and then the other one running after that's finished. These are actually both running at the same time. And it's probably due to it already had the Fee. No, it already had the which one did it have already? Yeah, the Fee was already in memory, was it? No, it was Llama 3.2 was already in memory, so it's not like it's had to load this one in and that's taking longer. It just seems that the Llama one is taking longer to work. So it looks like the Fee is perhaps coming to an end. She won 1,000 pieces of gold, silver and gemstones, and even had her own private wardrobe. Full. So the way these large language models work is they guess the most likely next token after the previous one. So that is essentially the next word. Words can actually be made up of more than one token if they're quite long words. It depends how the actual model was designed. This one is now really going on. So if we decide we wanted to actually stop this, we can do that just by dropping the Docker container, and it'll basically just kill all the processes from running. We can now see we've got two running concurrently. The Romans invented concrete. This one is consider the game is based on. So the main takeaway I want you to see from this is large language models are pretty slow to run on Raspberry Pi 5s because they're running on all four processors, completely maxing out. This is the absolute limit of what this hardware can do. What we can do at least now is run multiple at the same time, or run much larger language models. What I'm going to do, I'm actually going to stop those both from running. I'm simply going to do docker compose down, and that will basically just kill all the processes from running. If we look on here, we'll see that Ollama runtime basically get dropped as the Docker container whips the rug from underneath it. I can just hear the fans gone off, so that probably tells me, yep, so the Docker container has now stopped running. If I do docker ps, we can see we've got no Docker containers actually running. So I'm actually going to bring this back up, compose up. The -D means disconnected, it doesn't print anything to the screen, and it kind of runs in the background. So if I now go back to this, if I refresh this, it'll basically say that there's an error because I'm not connected to the site, so I just need to get rid of all that stuff there. Reconnect again once it's brought that back up. It takes it a couple of seconds for it to bring that prompt up, and then I can log back in. Remember what my password is. There we go. Okay, so it will have saved where it's up to, but it will kind of look like it got disconnected midway through those. So I'm going to start a new chat, and this time I'm going to run it on a very large language model for the Raspberry Pi, which is this Phi 4. And when I previously ran this, I think it ran for about 15 minutes and it still hadn't actually put any text to the screen. So I'm going to do that. Tell me a fun fact about the Roman Empire. I'm going to kick that off and we'll see how much RAM this actually takes up. So let's go to htop. So we can see that the large language model is now being loaded into RAM by Ollama. So we're at 5 gig, 6 gig. Let's see how, I think it goes up to about 11 gig, 7 gig, 8 gig. So we're now past the previous capability of the previous generation of Raspberry Pi, and or previous release I should say. We're at 10 gig there, and you can see now all 4 cores are kicking on. And the thing that I'm interested, even though this is maxed out, the actual interface is still quite responsive. I can type things in, docker ps, we can see what's going on there, docker stats for example, and that'll give like a mini version of that top there. So you can see the CPU is 362% running the Ollama, which is the back end. The front end is not using anything really. And if we now go back to our Open WebView interface, you can see that it started to kick out a response, so it's not quite as slow as the as when I ran this previously. This is probably workable. This isn't too bad. It's not as fast as the latest versions of ChatGPT, but they've done a lot of work and they have a lot of very dedicated hardware to make this work fast. But running on a reasonably cheap Raspberry Pi, this is quite impressive, and this wouldn't be possible until today's release. So you can see that what's going on. You can add in all kinds of models to Ollama as well. You can have ones that do image generation, ones that specialize in like coding and finding errors in program code, as well as just general ones like this. There's a whole bunch of different ones in the model zoo, so you can look through them on ollama.com/models, and you can see some of the common ones. It even tells you who this is by. So let me find an example. So some of them are by Meta, so the Llama ones are by owners of Facebook. We have some other ones which are by Google DeepMind, that's Gemma. Alibaba is this Gwen, so that powers their store, I guess. And then there's some other ones like the Phi ones are by Microsoft. So lots of different models by different companies, and they all have different specialities. No two are the same. You can also get ones which are what do they call it? Let me just find an example of it. kind of unrestricted. Uncensored, that's what they call it. So Dolphin Mixtral is uncensored. So this hasn't had any special treatment to remove things like bias or, I don't know, racism and things like that. It'll just give you the information as it's found it on the internet. A lot of these other ones which have had kind of alignment, these have got special treatments to them that try and make sure that they give a real unbiased output that's as factually true as possible. So there you go. For each of them, you'll have this uncensored version as well. So that's just how they kind of start out as they've been done. So that's how we run Ollama. Let's ever see if it's finished doing that. Yes, it has. It's still running, I can hear on the fans there, at 100% CPU, and that's because it's rerunning that text it's just generated back through the summarization to get the title, just so it can update in the interface there and give it a nice name. So it should tell us something about road building in the Roman Empire, something like that once it's finished. It doesn't take too long to do those. That should just pop back through the interface in a second. So this is a really fun piece of software to try out. I have actually got this running on Kev's GPT, I think kevsrobots.com, something like that. And if I'm at work, for example, and we're not allowed to use ChatGPT, I can use Kev's GPT to essentially get the same thing. It isn't banned as a URL. It just means that this is running, it's not, because it's running locally, there are no privacy issues from the point of view of, you know, what's somebody doing with this information. It's just running on the Raspberry Pi, and it's not sending that information to anybody else. So it's quite secure in the knowledge that your information is private, your requests are private, and they're not shared with anyone else. So I'm just going to wait for it to update that, and then I shall drop back to the Raspberry Pi. So the other thing I found as well that you can do on Raspberry Pis, you can do this on pretty much any Raspberry Pi 4 or 5, is you can run the Steam Link, which is which is you have to have another computer running the Steam games from like Valve or whatever, like Portal or Half-Life, but you can actually play them using the Raspberry Pi as like a screen. So it's not doing any processing locally on the Raspberry Pi, but I thought it was quite a fun thing that you can do. It's very easy to install as well. So I think that's pretty much everything on that demo that I wanted to showcase. Let me just see if there's anything else. No, I think that's pretty much it. So let's see, it's still running through all that text, and this is just to provide the title. Once it's finished doing that, it'll update the title. I can then shut that down, and it'll keep that for next time. So I'm just going to jump back over to my slides, and we can see what else we're talking about on here. So there's a couple of products I wanted to show you that I got my store together and I've now released. So the Robot Maker's Almanac. This is an essential guide for anybody that makes robots, that needs all the kind of information to hand when you're building robots. So typically, if you're putting together a robot, you'll have a microcontroller such as the Raspberry Pi Pico. You'll need to know what the pinouts are for that. So which ones are the I2C, which ones are general GPIOs, that kind of thing. You typically also need to know what the dimensions are of each of those different boards. So if you're using an M5 stack, or an Arduino Nano, Arduino Uno, Mega, all those different ones, and then other common components such as motor drivers, all the information that you might need for those, the pinouts, the DIMMs, it's all in this this handy pocket-sized. Doesn't require any batteries, it's always available to you, and it's pocketable with these nice rounded corners, handmade by me in the UK. So you can grab these now on the new store. So go over to kevsrobots.com, you'll see a nice big link at the top of the screen for that. We also have maker notes. So these are similar kind of form factor as the Robot Maker's Almanac, but these are purely blank sheets for you to scribble down all your ideas or your kind of designs for new robots and things. And these are designed for people who make robots because it's got tiny little dots on the page. I'm not sure if this will actually pick up, because let's go to the overhead camera and show you this. You might just be able to make out, there we go, the little dots on the page there. There's even a space for the title, and the little dots mean that you can draw things like circuit diagrams very easily and nicely and accurately because you've got the little dots there, but they actually don't get in the way, as you can see there, if you're just freehand drawing something. So you get these in packs of 3, and they are also available on kevsrobots.com. And then finally, I have a whole bunch of PCBs. I had a delivery today, in fact, from PCBWay of 100 of each of my PCBs. So there's now 100 game pads, there's 100 Pico Tamachibis, and 100 servo helpers. So the servo helpers, if you're ever working on robots and you want to connect up multiple servos, typically you'll need a separate power supply than the power supply that's driving your microcontroller, because servos require a lot more power typically. So these servo helpers separate out the signals from the power in a really simple PCB. You just need to add the headers and away you go. The gamepad is a kind of remote control for Raspberry Pi Pico. You can build your own robots, control this with some very simple buttons. You can even put a screen on there. I think I've got one of these to hand. Find it. So you can even put a screen on the front there, and there's some little user interface buttons that you can program to do menus and things like that. And there's the Raspberry Pi Pico W, Pico 2W, whatever you want, and then these simple push tact switches just get soldered in. It's very, very easy to put together, and you can even put some power on there, so you can power up your Pico and have it as a remote control for your robots. Nice and simple, kind of designed to be kind of a PlayStation or Xbox type controller. And yeah, simply just order the PCB and away you go. And the Pico Tamachibi, where have I put that? That is a little virtual pet toy. I've got one just there. So this is a little kind of virtual Tamagotchi type toy with 3 buttons for the menu. There's a screen there, and there's the Raspberry Pi Pico on the back. So they're just the PCBs. When you order these, you have to provide your own parts for them. But all the project materials, all the code, already on there for you. Cool. If you've not joined our Discord server, we have a fantastic Discord community. If you go to kevsrobots.com/discord, you'll get a nice sign up link for that, and you can join our community, show off all your robot builds, ask questions of the community. Really, really supportive, a really nice place to kind of hang out. So definitely check that out. And if you want to follow me on social media, I'm on all the social medias. So you can find me on the threads at Kevin McAleer at threads.net, on TikTok at Kevin McAleer 6. I'm on Instagram at Kevin McAleer. I'm on X at KevsMac. I'm on Mastodon, KevsMac at mastodon.social, and I'm also on Blue Sky at kevsmac.bsky.social as well. So definitely give me a follow on there and say hi. And yes, you'll see kind of the things I'm working on in the background. And if you want to get your name in the end credits, you can do that by going to kevsrobots.com/coffee. You can click the button, which is the super chat button. If you're watching this live, if you want to do a super thanks, I think it's just called a super thanks button. Yeah, super thanks button. That appears at the bottom of the main YouTube player, and you can send it just buy a coffee. I'm a big coffee drinker, so I appreciate every single one of those. You can also join the YouTube membership program, or the Buy Me a Coffee membership program as well, for the price of a coffee per month. So I think we have one last thing to go through, and that's our supporters. Yes, so here are the people who have got their name in the credits. So starting on the, this left-hand side over here, so we've got Doug Toppin, who bought me 3 coffees this month. Thank you for that, Doug. We have Johnny, who bought a coffee as well. And we've got a number of different members. We've got Marie TKD, we have got Andrew, we've got Shemi, Jeff Johnson, DN Corty, Marlene, and we have Tom. And then on the YouTube membership side, we've got Khan, we have Dale from Hybrid Robotics, we've got Marie, we've got Michael, we've got Steve, Ford, Bello, Orkshad39, Littleback, Paul, we've got Johnny, Handsome Cheerlights, Prem Kumar, we've got Stephen, John Paul, Alistair, Cassie, Tinkering Rocks, Johnny, and of course we have Tom as well. So thank you everybody who's subscribed to the channel. Really, really appreciate that. Thank you for helping support the show. I won't be able to do it without you guys. So it's at this point in the video where YouTube will recommend over here a video for you to watch next. So if you watch that video, it'll be very interesting to you. It's been selected, handpicked by the YouTube algorithm from my backlog of over 400 videos, and it thinks you'll find that one interesting. So definitely check that one out and let me know what you think. So if you're watching this on replay, I'll say thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you next time.